guys, this is the Scholar General, Mo Bing. So I want to make a quick video that's actually a response video to Shadiversity. Now, I've been a subscriber of Shad's for years now. He has a great channel, so if anyone's not subscribed to him, you need to go there right now and subscribe. He makes excellent videos about medieval European arms and armor and castles especially. I love his videos on castles, they're great. And I highly recommend everyone to go check his channel out. So I'm responding to some of his thoughts about the use of leather armor. Now, Shadiversity's made a few videos about this, which I'll link in the description. Basically, he thinks that leather armor was not prevalent in medieval Europe, at least compared to gambeson, or textile armor, and he also believes that it wouldn't be as effective as textile armor in most cases. Now, for medieval Europe, I think it's safe to say that gambeson or textile armor would be more common than leather armor, but I wanted to highlight some other historical contexts and get into the details of whether or not gambeson is in fact better or than leather armor, basically. The first thing, there's a few points, and I'm mostly going to talk about East Asia, China, and Mongolia particularly. So to start off, for one, when we say leather armor, almost everyone immediately thinks of cowhide, but this is by far not the strongest type of leather you can find. In fact, from ancient China during the Shang and Zhou dynasty, we have several pieces of armor which is actually lacquered rhino hide. Now, that is going to be substantially tougher than any type of bovine, basically, you can find. So, when we say leather, we have to understand that it's a diverse, there's many different types of animals with many different types of hide, and they're not all necessarily equally resilient. So you can find types that are stronger than cow, basically. Now the second thing I wanted to bring up, one of the main things, is that if we look at Mongolia, we can see extensive use of leather armor. Now most of this leather armor is in the form of lamellar, which is like basically small little pieces of armor that are pieces of leather that are all woven together into a suit. Now, Shadiversity brings up a few things. He makes a few claims about leather armor that don't really apply to leather armor when we consider the existence of lamellar. For instance, he says that leather armor is extremely hard to repair. If you're just having one large piece of leather and it gets cut and you try to sew it together, it's true that you lost some structural integrity that you won't be able to gain back. But if you're talking about lamellar is fairly simple to repair. You just have to make more pieces and redo the lacing, and then you're good to go. It's really not too complicated, and it's just it's not nearly as difficult to repair as other types of leather armor might be. Another thing is that Shadiversity also talks about the lack of padding in leather armor. One thing I'd like to point out is that every type of armor except gambeson or textile armor, you will wear padding underneath it, basically, even if it's just your normal clothes. Take Mongolia, for example. Mongols wear the del. It's like a type of jacket, and it's made out of either wool or nowadays cotton or maybe silk at the higher end. And particularly in winter, sometimes they wear these really, really thick del, these thick winter coats. And there's no reason that can't provide the padding underneath your leather lamellar. And also lamellar is flexible, but it's not as flexible as, let's say, chainmail. So it has a little bit of shock absorption when compared to some other types of armor, basically. And one last point, maybe not the last point, but one more point that I want to bring up is this idea of economy. Now, Shadiversity talks at length about how making leather armor is economically impractical. It's expensive. It's comparatively more expensive than making cheap textile armor. Now, this might be true in certain areas, but if we look at Mongolia, we can see a particularly good example of leather being cheaper than textiles. Well, it would be my guess, certainly, because to the exclusion of wool, basically. Because in Mongolia, there's a lot of grass, and you can't grow plant fiber very well. You can't grow flax or cotton out on the steppe, really. What you need to do is, but you can grow lots of animals very easily. You can have herds, just giant herds. Everybody has like 50 goats or more, and everyone has sheep. Maybe they have camels if they're on the more wealthy end. All these different things. So there's an abundance of animals compared to plant material, basically, in Mongolian society on the steppe. So in this context, making leather armor is inherently economic. And it's very easy to do because there's an abundance of leather floating around to use, basically. So this makes leather armor all of a sudden become a low-tier, entry-level armor. I don't think many Mongol warriors would go into battle without at least some type of leather protection. I mean, it makes sense that given the society and how widespread it would be, that they would at least put something, have some extra barrier besides their normal jackets, basically. Yeah, and that's my main point in this video, is just that when we talk about leather armor, we shouldn't exclude lamellar, because lamellar leather can overcome a lot of the boundaries and will overcome many of the problems that are associated with leather that Shad talks about. And one final point is that I think we can theorize about how gambeson might be more effective than leather lamellar, or vice versa, till the cows come home, we can just keep doing that on and on. But we won't really know for sure unless we had some very, very rigorous tests with historically accurate reproductions of everything, basically, from historically accurate hand-woven textiles all the way to, cow leather raised on the Mongolian steppe, and so until we have some, and we'd have to do extensive training on multiple suits of armor before you can reach any kind of conclusion, because you can't just use one suit of armor and draw real conclusions from it. You need to have multiple tests over time to see any kind of real data set to draw those types of conclusions. So I don't think it's safe to say, oh, one is better than the other, at least until multiple tests have been done, and so I'll leave that up in the air, but I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss leather, basically, as Shad sometimes implies. So, alright, well, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video.